And we are ensuring that more pensioners get that extra income, with the biggest ever campaign to increase take-up. This saw tens of thousands of more awards to the pension credit in the year up to November compared to the previous year. In addition, our commitment to the triple lock for this Parliament means that women will see their state pension rise by up to £575 this year, with incomes up to £2,100 a year higher by the end of the Parliament. Indeed, overall spending on the state pension is set to be over £30 billion a year higher by the end of this Parliament compared to 2024-25. And we're putting record investment into the NHS, meaning thousands more pensioners are getting the operations and treatment that they need rather than being left in pain on waiting lists. That is the positive difference that this government is making. Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe it was right to review the evidence, and that having done so, we've made the right decision based on due process and the body of evidence. And at the same time, looking to the future, we are taking important steps to support women in retirement and help them to build a better life for themselves and their families, and I commend this statement to the House. I
call the Shadow Minister, Mark Garnier.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement. So as constituency MPs, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will all have met many people, many campaigners from the Women Against State Pension Inequality campaign group, the WASPI Women. I'm sure that many members of this House will have received a large amount of correspondence on this recently, and if they're anything like me, where I've had 150 emails recently about this, they will really feel the strength of opinion there is out there on this thing. But it is safe to say that both our constituents and as members of Parliament, we have been left wanting by this government. In December 2024, the previous Secretary of State, the Right Honourable Member for Leicester West, told this House that the government would not compensate these women. Let me remind colleagues what her rationale was, and I quote, "The government do not believe that paying a flat rate to all women at a cost of up to £10.5 billion would be a fair or proportionate use of taxpayers' money." She tried to also argue that they couldn't afford it because of holes in the government finances. But as my right honourable friend, the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, rightfully said, the government compensation should always be based on what is fair and just. So before getting into government, it seemed that Labour MPs did think that an injustice had been done. And let us remind our colleagues of what members of this government have said in the past. The Prime Minister himself called this situation a huge injustice. The Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary slammed the cliff edge, he said, that faced WASPI women. The Foreign Secretary said she was fighting for a fair deal for the WASPI women. The Chancellor of the Exchequer claimed to want justice for WASPI women. Even the current Secretary of State, Madam Deputy Speaker, got in on the action, where he put out a social media post with the caption, "Members of Parliament campaigning for a better deal for WASPI women." Is it no wonder, therefore, that the WASPI women who were promised so much are so angry? The people who used to stand beside them have now turned against them. If the government really believed that these women had faced a great injustice, they would have found a way to compensate them. They could have avoided a deal with Mauritius that will cost us all £35 billion. But they chose not to. They could have found savings on our country's benefit bill, but they chose not to. They had 14 years to prepare for government and are messing up by doing nothing. And that brings us to the statement from the Secretary of State today. Isn't it convenient, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he should choose a sitting day when most MPs are not here? It's almost as if they don't want to hear the criticism from his own backbenchers. In reality, all the Secretary of State is doing is announcing that nothing has changed and that they won't be compensating WASPI women. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have a few questions. Given he previously campaigned for a better deal for WASPI women, does he think that today's announcement provides that better deal? Secondly, in his statement, the Secretary of State tries to argue that this is somehow our fault on this side of the chamber. However, he forgets that the maladministration, which the previous Secretary of State apologised for, was committed under the last Labour government before 2010. This is something that the Ombudsman report made explicitly clear. So can the Secretary of State just hold his hands up and take accountability for these mistakes? Thirdly, and this is a really interesting point, Madam Deputy Speaker, The Secretary of State chose to mention the triple lock in his statement, and he chose to say that the state pension would go up by up to £575 this year, with an expected income rises by up to £2,100 a year by the end of this Parliament. Now, we all know there's no cap on the triple lock. There's no cap on the triple lock. But he makes a point where he says it will go by up to 2,100. So is he implying that the triple lock is about to be capped? Can he confirm that he's apparently U-turning on their policy on the triple lock by imposing a cap? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, isn't it now just fact that this government resemble, frankly, a bunch of joyriders pulling handbrake turns in a Tesco car park when they should be a serious party of government? Their backbenchers keep being marched up the hill only to be told to march down again. They even take the whip away from them for having a conscience, only to be told later that ministers are proud to support policies that were only recently sackable offences. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, does he really think this constant back and forth is fair on WASPI women? I look forward to his comments.
The honourable gentleman's response. He's right that there's been a forceful and an energetic campaign which has resulted in lots of emails and contact with members right across the House. But his government had this report from the Ombudsman. They could have taken a decision before the election. They chose not to, as with so many other issues. And perhaps the Ombudsman had an inkling of how unlikely it would be to get a decision from the government, because the Ombudsman of the time made the recommendations on remedy to Parliament rather than to his government. Now he refers to Labour, to me, to other MPs on this side of the House. I remind him, we did vote against the acceleration in the rise to the state pension age that was put through by the coalition government. In terms of the re-examination of the decision, I thought it was right to do, to make absolutely sure that we got this right, considering not just the 2007 report, but a whole range of evidence and documents. I have repeated the apology given by my predecessor for the maladministration that the Ombudsman found. And as for his comments on the triple lock, there is no change in our position, and the figures quoted reflect the estimates of the OBR throughout the Parliament.